Okay, we are live, recorded. Welcome everybody to this Continual AI learning group. As you can see, I'm not Vincenzo Lo Monaco because Vincenzo Lo Monaco is on holiday now, well-deserved holidays. Now I think he's enjoying the beautiful sea of the southern Italy. And I'm the substitute for this for this reading group. Today we have Jari Pomponi, which is a PhD student at the University of Rome, La Sapienza, and he will present us his last paper, Efficient Continual Learning in Neural Networks with Embedding Regularization, which has been recently accepted at Neurocomputing. So congratulations again. And Jari, when you're ready, you can start.
Okay. Thank you. So, efficient continual learning and neural networks with embedding regularization is the method that I developed during my master thesis in the last year. So I'm Jari Pomponi, and I developed this paper with Simone Scardapane, which is my PhD supervisor, and Vincenzo Lo Monaco, and Aurelio Uncini, which is a professor of the department in which I developed this paper. So just to do a brief introduction about the problem, we want to work in continual learning in a classification supervised task. So usually we have a dataset like this one, NIST, which is composed by 10 classes, and we group the classes into different tasks. So we can take, for example, 0 and 1, all the images which contains 0 and 1, and create a task. So basically a task is simple a dataset. And then we have a sequence of these joint tasks, and a model is trained sequentially on those tasks. Usually when we train a model, if the task is not the first one, the information that the model learned about past tasks are erased, because the model needs to learn about the current task. This phenomenon is called catastrophic forgetting, and we want to develop some kind of method which erase or mitigate this catastrophic forgetting. When we work with a supervised classification setting, we can define two scenarios. So the first scenario is called multi-head scenario, in which we have a neural network and a classifier neural network, which is called a head. So the neural network basically extracts the information of a sample from a task, and the head associated to that task classifies it. So when the first task is over, we have another task, we had another head which with its weights. So the weights are this joint, as you can see, between the first and the second, and so on. The single incremental task on the other side, it's a more complicated one. The principle is the same, in which we have n tasks that we see incrementally. But when we add a new task, basically the output of the network is updated with new classes, and the weights are shared. So this is a much complex scenario, because when we train, for example, on the last task, the network completely erase all the information about the previous one. Here, for example, if the network is not regularized, maybe we can save some accuracy score on the past tasks because the heads remains untouched. So this multi-head scenario is much simpler, and in this paper I worked on this one. So we have in the literature we have different methods that can be grouped together into three big sets. The first one contains the architectural strategies, which are methods that works on the weights of the network, for example, by pruning them or freezing them and some sort stuff like that. And also the network can be shrinked or expanded during the training. Then we have the rehearsal strategies, in which we save a portion of past tasks. Those portions are used later to regularize the network. This is the approach that is more similar to training all the tasks together, because if you save, for example, all the images and you alternate a batch from the current task and a batch from past tasks, you have basically a standard training phase on the complete dataset. So it requires an external memory, for example, in which we save our samples. Another slightly different rehearsal strategy is called pseudo rehearsal strategies, in which the images are crafted on the fly. So we have, for example, a generative model like I don't know, normalizing flow, variation autoencoder, stuff like that, and we generate images on the while regularizing the network. In this case, the catastrophic forgetting is moved from the neural network to the generative model. And then we have the regularization techniques, in which we have a loss function like in all the others, but we extend it with a regularization penalty, which aims to select, consolidate past information or slow down the training on the new tasks. Embedding regularization combines rehearsal strategies and regularization techniques, because we have an external memory that we use to sample to draw images from the past tasks and regularize the network using a penalty. So embedding regularization is a very simple method. Let's take a neural network, a general neural network. Here the neural network takes an input and output a label associated to the input. We can decompose the neural network in an encoder, which extracts information from the input and output an embedding vector, which contains the information that the network is capable of extracting from the input. And then we have a classifier which takes the embeddings and output the label. So when a task is over, we just take a portion, a subset of the task, and we save in the external memory the images, X for example, and the associated embeddings in the end of the training. So when we want to regularize the network, we have this external memory which contains the embeddings and the images, and we sample a subset of pairs from this memory. We feed the neural network, the current one. We fed x the image into the neural network, and we extract the new embeddings that the network is capable of extract from the sample x. And then we use a distant function to produce the regularization term. Basically, that's all. And the regularization term is added to the loss, the current loss. So we force the network to extract the same information from past tasks without touching the inner weights of the network. So the network has a more degree of freedom, basically, because we only want that the last output of the encoder minimize this distance. As distant function, you can use every distant function. There is no limits and depends on the problem. For example, I use the cosine similarity because I didn't want to force the network too much, so the space of the embeddings can rotate and stuff like that, but needs to go in the same direction of the embeddings in the past. So the external memory can be improved. For example, we can add a weight associated to the entries in the memory, and we can use these weights to sample uh, images that can lead to a better consolidation of the weights. We can also implement some kind of smart saving from the current task. For example, we can save the images which gives us the highest loss, because it means that those images are harder to minimize, to extract good information. So we can use any sort of improvement. You can think, okay, we have an external memory which not only contains X, but also the embeddings. And we know that when we work with very huge images on dataset which contains complex images, the embeddings can be really big. So you can think that this is not a good idea and does not scale well, but actually you need a very few samples from the task to regularize correctly in a good way the neural network. And basically that's all. The method is very simple. It is very easy to implement, and it's very straightforward because it's easy to understand what's going on, basically. So I won't present all the results, but just the main one. So we test on different dataset, of course. We compared embedding regularization to similar and established methods such as GAM and EWC. Also, we test different sampling techniques from the memory and the required memory space and the time complexity of the algorithm. As metrics, we used accuracy and backward transfer from the paper that I cited here. The accuracy is the average final accuracy on all the tasks. while the backward transfer is how much of the accuracy the network is capable of keeping during the training. So they are both important because high accuracy but lower backward transfer means that the network basically mm, forget forget everything about past tasks. So we choose to evaluate both. So those are the main results. Actually, those results are not from the original paper, but they are improved. We have improved them because in the original paper I used a very small neural network because my PC was very old and some sort of stuff. But the results on the original paper are similar to this one, to the one that I present here in the table. You can see that we compared embedding realization with learning without forgetting. Actually, in this case, I slightly improved the learning without forgetting because I implemented an external memory from which we sample images to force to, to, to mitigate the catastrophic forgetting, because learning without forgetting was a method developed for basically two tasks, and when we evaluate more than two, the scores drop drastically. Then we have EWC, which is one, I think, if not the one, regularization method in which we calculate basically how much the weights are important from past tasks, and we slow down the training or the changing of those weights. Then we have GM, which can be classified like ER as a pseudo a rehearsal strategy and a regularization strategy, because that there is an external memory from which we sample the images, and then those images are used to regularize the gradients from in the current gradients, the ones associated with the current batch of the current task. This is a very powerful and very interesting method, but it requires a lot of time because uh, at each batch of the current task we need to minimize a quadratic problem to find some regularization term which can uh, move our gradients to fit the basically the space of the weights that the network learned from the past tasks. We can see that embedding realization, achieves better accuracy on all the tasks and better backward transfer, which is a negative uh, values because it tells us how much of the accuracy is lost during the training. So we can see that GM is the second best method, but is better than GM because actually the weights are not so forced, are not so as I said, the network have more degree of freedom, so uh, its internal weights can change in every way, and we really don't care. We just want that the embedding vector is constant during the time. So other results, very interesting. Achieves better results with only 100 images per task. So it is a very good result, and means that our method scales well with the number of tasks, and also requires a very small time to regularize, and so to train the network on all the tasks. One thing that I want to show you is how the embedding space of the first task changes during the training. So we have three methods: GM, ER, and then naive, which means that we just train the network sequentially on all the tasks without any method to alleviate catastrophic forgetting. So these are the projection of the embeddings when the first task is over. So we have only two classes because we have 0 and 1. Then when the first task is over, we can see that naive completely merge the two space. So they are not more separate as in the end of the first task. And this is why actually the network is not capable of classify them correctly. We can see that GM keeps some kind of separability of the two sets, but ER is actually the best one. And here we can see that, as before, ER basically remains constant. So we have a really neat split between the two classes, basically. And then we can see that in the end, the embedding space slightly change because we are using, as I told before, the cosine distance, so they can rotate and stuff like that, but they remain separable. Very, as you can see, it's very easy to see where the line can be put. So the classifier head require basically is capable of classify correctly the images from past tasks because the embeddings remains unchanged. So to summarize, we presented a hybrid rehearsal regularization technique. It mitigates the catastrophic forgetting problem by regularizing the embeddings of the network. It requires small memory, and it is faster than other methods that works on the weights of the network. So in the end, I suggest you, if you are interested, to read the paper, because in the paper we have different comparison between the external memory and of GM and EWC, how the number of samples in the memory affect the scores, so accuracy and backward transfer. We also have running time comparison, and we also studied different sampling techniques from the external memory. In the future, I would like to extend this method to other scenario, so not classification one, for example, reinforcement learning, because I think that it's crucial to keep the embeddings in the same space, because then the network is able to classify correctly or extract constantly the same information from the input. And we already developed an extension which replaces the external memory in favor of a normalizing flow. So it is a pseudo rehearsal method and works very well also for more complex datasets such as Cipher10, because the generative model works on the embeddings and not on the images. So the training is much simpler, and the generative model itself It's small and can reproduce the embeddings extracted from the network. So that's all. It's a very easy method, very straightforward, and so there is not much to say, but I believe that can be improved in the future and can be applied on many level or in many problems. So thank you all. If you have some question, I will be happy to answer them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Yari, for the talk and the interesting method. As you said, it's a really simple method, but effective because it reaches state of the art in many different benchmarks. I have a few questions about mainly the idea of the method. First of all, if you try to compare the result that you obtain comparing the embedding, so saving the memory image, the image and the embedding, versus saving not the embedding but the logits of the classifier, because I understand your point, which is I want to preserve the structure and the division of the embeddings from the past classes to simplify the work of the classifier, if I'm right. Well, I think that maybe it will be worth trying to not simplify the work of the classifier, but to force to produce the same logits and the same probabilities at the end. So my question is, have you tried something like this? So a comparison using the last layer of the network and the logits, and so a sort of hybrid replay and learning without forgetting approach.
Good question. I did not try so basically moving the regularization into another level, because since it was a multi-head scenario, for me it was straightforward to cut the network into two blocks. So but I think that can works pretty well. I think, I don't know.
I have another question. Just for the a more experimental question, more about the experiments. I see that you use MNIST, but I read in the paper that you also used ImageNet. I think I'm right.
Nope, I did not.
No?
Because I had a very old PC, so it was not possible. And also
my fault.
The neural network was very small because the computational capability was not that great. So.
Okay, so my other question is, you said that you memorize 100 patterns for each class, for each task. So you memorize both the image and the embedding. Just an estimation of the quantity of the memory that you used with MNIST or another data set. Because
in the paper there is simply the number of samples, so the entry. In the new paper, I also counted the number of floats, so the number of which are required to regularize the network. So if you think it's very straightforward, because we have the size of the embedding plus the dimension of the images multiplied by the number of so if you compare GM and YAR, as I told, you can think that the embeddings requires more memory because you have the images and the embeddings, but the the method requires very small memory. So if you compare the footprint, the memory footprint on the PC is very, very affordable, I would say.
Okay, thank you. If anyone has another question for Yari, there is some questions in the chat or speak now.
Hi, Ari.
Hi.
So I'm actually a beginner in both deep learning and in continual learning. So like my question might be a little bit naive. First of all, thanks for the presentation today. So during the presentation, you said that one way to improve, like generally improve this would be taking the examples more smartly. And you said that you could select images which gave highest loss. Could you like explain a little bit more on that?
Yeah, basically, actually, in the paper, I did not done. I haven't done this kind of experiment. It's just an idea of a more intelligent saving of the images, because when we classify an image, you have a loss which tells us how much it was easy for the network to classify that image. So instead of sampling random images from the task, you can pick the one that gives you the highest loss, but are, of course, classified correctly, because that means that the networks struggle more on classify those images. So maybe you can force the network more, because, for example, in NIST you have a lot of images which are that are very straightforward, and maybe you have some kind of image, for example, a zero which is scaled or translate a strange number. Maybe the network is capable of classifying correctly the sample,
Got it.
but struggle more. So if you can select the images in which networks struggle more, you can force the embedding extraction more.
Got it.
That
Actually,
was the idea.
I was thinking initially that you said loss more, but I did not think of the assumption that it should be classified correctly. So I was thinking even if it is incorrectly classified, even then you would select it. So I was thinking, and then because we train it on next consecutive task, so the basically the model efficiency decreases. So if it was not able to learn then how will it be able to classify now? That was the main problem that I was having with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Yari? Okay, maybe I have another question about the memory. So you said that you select the images to insert in the memory based, for example, on the loss. So you insert the images that produce the highest loss. Sorry, if I'm right. But do you have a fixed number of images that you want to insert in the memory for each task, or simply you have a threshold on the loss and you insert all the images that have the loss or the method that you use higher than the threshold? So if an image has a loss higher than the threshold, you insert it in the memory, or you have a fixed number of images that you have to insert. So if you have already inserted, I don't know, 50 images in the current task, even if some images are a threshold higher than the loss, a loss higher than the threshold, sorry, you didn't insert them.
Yeah, I prefer to use a fixed size memory, actually, because the main feature of the method is the limited number of the samples of the entries in the memory. So fixing them improves this feature, basically, because we really need only 100, for example. So
Yeah.
we don't care to have, I don't know, half of the data set. But I think that if you have no problem with the memory, you can save a lot of images. I think that depends on the data set. So for example, in ImageNet, maybe you want more, so you can put a threshold and use all the images over that threshold. So I think that depends, but with those datasets, it was very easy to just set a number of images, sample them, and use them to regularize.
Okay, thank you. There are some other questions. Okay, if there are any question, yeah.
I have a question. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Could you go back to the slide where you show the visualizations of the embedding?
Sorry?
The visualization of the embeddings, the slide.
Yeah.
Could you go back to it, please?
This one?
Yeah. So, I want to talk about the naive algorithm and the task 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought intuitively that it will mix more as we give more tasks, but it is like becoming quite separable. Like, is there a reasoning behind this, or is it?
Well, I looked into that, but I think that was, if I remember correctly, just a projection, a problem of the projection. I used the PCA, the embeddings was very big, and using PCA, that this was the final result, but the score dropped basically. So
All right.
the main problem is that we used a very simple scenario, which is the multi-head. So the scores drop, but not by a large amount, basically. So you can drop maybe by 20-30%, but the network usually is capable of keeping some score. As you can see here, the score is high even if we don't regularize the network. So it's just a problem with the projection, basically, the PCA.
Got it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Another questions? If anyone have another question. Okay, so thank you again, Jari, for the presentation and for answering all the questions. I ask if you can send me via email the slides. So we publish a post in our forum with the slide and with the video of the talk, so people can ask you questions or ask questions in general in the comments.
Okay,
thank you. And okay, this is the last reading group. Now we have a brief summer break of a few weeks, and we are going to return at the end of August or at the first week of September. So thank you again, everyone, for participating in this reading group and all the other reading group that we have in this year. And thank you again by me and on behalf of all the ContinualAI Association. Thank you again, Jari, for the presentation, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a nice summer.
Have a nice summer and stay safe. Bye.